The United States is currently undergoing a process of imperial liquidation, signaling the imminent end of its status as the singular global superpower due to profound financial and geopolitical weaknesses. This decline is evidenced by two desperate actions. First, the U.S. is forced to overturn years of sanctions to beg Nicolas Maduro and Venezuela for heavy crude oil, demonstrating that the petrodollar system is breaking down. This content is a summarized interpretation of various sources and should not be taken as financial, political, or investment advice. It reflects analytical viewpoints. Second, the Treasury Department must now approach its main rival, China, to purchase a massive amount of $3 trillion in new U.S. debt because traditional buyers are unwilling or unable to finance the American deficit. There is a critical irony that the U.S. is pleading with the very nations it attempts to sanction and contain, highlighting a fundamental loss of global leverage. Ultimately, these events confirm a transition to a multipolar world order and predict that the U.S. will likely resort to mass inflation to devalue its way out of its debt crisis. Then here are major questions. How has the petrodollar and treasury bond system collapse redefined American global power? What specific vulnerabilities force the former American superpower to beg rivals for essential resources? Why must Washington beg Venezuela for heavy crude? What strategic irony defines U.S. relations with China? In general, the collapse of the petrodollar and U.S. bond system is pushing America from global hegemon to debtor. Sanctions backfired, forcing the U.S. to seek oil from Venezuela and financing from China. Weaponizing the dollar shattered trust, while BRICS builds alternatives that bypass Washington. Now the U.S. needs global capital more than the world needs its permission, redefining its power and weakening its leverage. For the second question, the U.S. faces a crisis as its imperial power gives way to debtor dependence. A refinery mismatch forces Washington to seek heavy crude from Venezuela, undermining years of sanctions. At the same time, soaring deficits leave China as the only major buyer able to fund U.S. debt. With the petrodollar and bond trust eroding, America must negotiate from weakness, relying on rivals to keep its energy system and finances afloat. Third, sources say Washington now relies on Venezuela for heavy crude, as U.S. refineries were built for oil America no longer produces. The mismatch threatens diesel output, the backbone of U.S. supply chains, forcing the government to grant sanctions waivers and seek cooperation from a leader it once tried to oust. The dependency marks a strategic reversal, with the U.S. needing Venezuelan oil to keep its logistics system running. And finally, sources report a sharp paradox in U.S.-China relations. Washington publicly wages economic and tech war on Beijing, while privately relying on China to fund its $3 trillion borrowing needs. With traditional buyers gone, China remains the key purchaser of U.S. debt. Analysts say the U.S. is holding a gun at China, while China holds the deed to the U.S. House. If Beijing stops buying treasuries, America's financial system could fracture. In general, the U.S. power is shifting from empire to debtor as key pillars, petrodollar, energy security, and treasury demand erode. Washington now depends on Venezuela's heavy crude to keep refineries running, and on China to finance its soaring debt. Public hostility masks private dependence, leaving the U.S. negotiating from weakness as rivals gain leverage and alternative systems bypass American dominance.